big promise of human design is that you are supposed to know. You already came here knowing who you came here to be. You were already living your perfect essence. And what has happened since then is that you've had many different voices telling you that you should be any other way. And that's what pulls us out of our real self. Now, it's very common in today's world to talk about how much conditioning comes from our childhood and from our society, but we don't often talk enough about the conditioning that we ourselves are willingly reconditioning ourselves with over and over and over. Now, everyone knows that one of the big ways that we condition ourselves is by plugging into other people's realities all the time and what we see social media doing. And even if you're conscious and even if you know that it's a highlight reel, or even if you know that you don't believe everything you see on the internet, it's still to your basic primal brain so suggestive. And it's still going to kind of shunt you into seeing a reality that is more narrow than the possibilities of what this reality could be actually are. So it's still narrowing your focus, right? Like everything that you focus on takes up more of your eyes at any given point. And so the more we are on social media, the more we are painting what is instead of what could be. Now, I've recently been sharing that something really cool you can do on your Instagram is manage your content preferences. So if you go into your settings on Instagram and you click content preferences, there's one section called specific words and keywords, and you can enter in words that you don't want posts or reels that contain those words to be sent to you or suggested to you. So I was having fun with it like 3 weeks ago, putting in stuff, but no judgment. I just don't want to see stuff like in my brain. I just don't want it to be sent to me. Things like get ready with me, things like menopause, perimenopause, which for some reason was getting absolutely shoved down my throat at some point. And I didn't want anything about celebrities. I didn't want anything about, I made a whole list, lean muscle, aging, and so on and so forth. Because all of those to me, well, most of those, there are obviously high expressions of each of those things, but most of the content that you see around those topics is actually not expansive. It's more contractive. It makes me feel more contractive. It makes me feel more limited. It makes me feel more like this is how things go, because at 45 you do this and then you need that and this is what you need, instead of letting my own brain and my own being kind of create its own and show me its own way that it wants to unfold. And that's really the power of being your real self, is allowing the aura to just unfold the way it wants to unfold, because auras are going to aura. Where it's going to go towards its destiny, where you're going to have the free will is how much you want to get in the way. So this morning I woke up and I was like, the other thing I'm going to add to my content preferences is billionaire. Because if I hear another, and this is just me and my sassy voice in my head, like if I hear another spiritual male leader talk about something to do with a billionaire, tell a story to do with, this is what, when I speak to billionaires, they all tell me they do. Or if I hear another one say, I learned from this billionaire, this billionaire, this billionaire. I'm like, I just don't want to hear content about billionaires, because let's sit with this for a second and think about it. Billionaires are still humans. Billionaires still have their issues. And yes, they're absolutely doing something right. So I appreciate that it's signaling that they've gotten something down. But I also was thinking to myself, hold on a second. Is being a billionaire the goal? And I think it's especially one that men fall for a lot, as another way of knowing that we're worthy or that we're, proving. But like, if that's the goal, we have to think about what it's going to bring us. And so what is being a billionaire going to get you that being worth 100 million not going to get you? Like, ultimately, I remember one of my ex-boyfriends saying to me, like, even if you have all the money in the world, you still want to go to like Nobu, like where else? Okay, you have a private dinner party. And maybe there are some people who want to have 10 boats and 10 planes. But if you have 100 million versus if you have 1 billion, you can still buy yourself a lot of things that are the same. And so where in it then is ego? Like, is there a big difference between being worth 4 billion and 8 billion? Is there a difference in the life you can lead? Like, what is it that you want to have once, if you're aiming towards being a billionaire, what is it going to give you? Like, are you clear on that? And my experience with a lot of these people is they're not clear on why they want to be that, other than to earn the title, because they believe that that's going to be the thing that makes them worthy or have social currency or be admired by others and so on and so forth. So I was like, I just don't know if I want to have this stuff be suggested to me, because I'm also so clear on the fact that the more we know the stuff that makes us happy, that's what's actually going to make us happy at every step along the way. So even if I could afford to own 3 homes, I know my version of it is to maybe just own one and rent everywhere else I go, because I think 3 homes also comes with a headache, right? Like everything has a cost, and not in a heavy, like negative way, but just like everything comes at a certain commitment of your energy, right? Do I want to commit my energy to managing 3 homes? No, I don't. And that's fine if someone does want to have 10 homes, and that's fine if someone doesn't want to ever own a home in their life. But being the billionaire in itself is gonna, to the degree that which it starves you of asking yourself that question of what truly makes me happy, you're aiming at something that's just going to move. You're aiming at the rainbow, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and the goalpost is going to get moved by life from you if you haven't laid the groundwork of understanding what truly makes you happy. You'll be a miserable billionaire, or you'll be a billionaire who's super shallow and super unfulfilled, or you'll have anger issues that you'll take out on the people that you've hired then to make your life easier, because your life actually feels heavy because you don't know how to sit with your anxiety or the level of responsibility, or. So that really got me thinking about a lot of other things. And what it got me thinking about is, well, and I want to caveat this by saying there's no judgment if it's genuinely authentic to you. But it also made me chuckle, because I was like, then what happens when these people become worth billions is now they want to go to freaking space or now they want to they want to live forever. And so the goalpost has moved for them, even though when they first wanted to be billionaires, maybe they thought that was going to be their resting place forever. And so if you don't feel this sense of worthiness along the way, life is not going to hand it to you just because of the goal. In many ways, it's going to bring up your least worthy self, because you have more to play with and you are more, life is more accentuated for you. Life is magnifying it more because of your increased resources and things. So it got me thinking about that. And it also got me thinking about things like these titles that we assign to people, like a billionaire, right? Being valued at $1 billion is a valuation. And so I think people don't realize this enough, that especially in today's climate, you can build a tech thing or anything speculative and it be worth tens of billions of dollars because of valuation and speculation and the current state of how people are feeling. But that's actually not the way that things used to get valued. Something is very different about the financial market now in the last maybe 20 or 30 or 40 years even, where something was used to be valued on profit alone, whether it's actually selling goods, whereas there's many companies now that are being valued based on speculation of what they could do in the future. And so I don't know if you guys remember, I think it was 2018 or 19, that vaping company Juul was valued at $38 billion at one point. And that meant all of a sudden everyone wanted to get on, and it was going to be the future. I don't even see it now. Haven't even seen someone smoke one. I haven't seen it be advertised in a little tobacco shop here. So that shows me even more that, are we loving the idea of someone valuing that at us? But you can be a founder who owns a company that's valued at 20 billion and not have 200K in your own personal account. So again, it's that separation of ego for the title versus like what's actually in my real life. Like, what am I seeing? What do I want to experience? Because it's going to add to the way that my happiness code looks, and it's going to be an aid to my specific happiness code. So are we aiming for the shiny carrots, which I talk about a lot, for what they are versus for what they'll actually give us? Not what they'll mean about us, not what they'll validate about us, but because we're expecting to receive something that is genuinely, authentically our happiness code back to us, and they are here to serve us. The other thing it really got me thinking about, and last week or 2 weeks ago by the time this episode comes out, I was talking about how there's an astrological aspect right now called the planet Algol, which is very prominent in the sky. And Algol is to do with leaders falling and people being beheaded energetically, obviously also physically back in the day. But it was about this, there is this prominent energy of people falling. You've also heard me say that on the previous podcast we did about gurus falling. Anyone who puts themselves on a pedestal thinking that that's still a good idea and that's still a strong play, that's not going to be allowed to happen anymore. And it really got me thinking about this industry, the spiritual industry, because there are two separate kinds of people in this industry, meaning there are people who are in it to be in it for the spiritual industry, right? They want to change a couple lives, no shade, want to get a bit of attention, want to make money, and it's a good industry to be in, and they have the skills to make money out of it. And then there's people for whom it's a real life path, whom it's a real calling. And if you want to be in this industry, if you want to leave a mark, or you want to be some kind of, you really feel called from a soul level to be in this, what you need to realize is that you have to die every single day to be in service, to bow your head, to be in humility to other people. And serving others has to come at the cost of you giving up this idea, even that you want to make money, or that you want to be someone, or that you want to have an impact, or you have a certain idea of the way it needs to go. Or also, this idea that you are here to manifest, quote unquote. Now, I'll just be totally transparent and use myself as an example. Do I want a beautiful life? Yes. Do I want to support myself? Yes. Do I want to create abundance for myself? Yes. But the difference is I've had to say to the universe, if those things aren't meant for me, I will give them up for the promise of the other thing. And that's what a path of true surrender looks like. And you can take this in whatever arena you're in, is like, you know what? I love the idea of having an app that serves millions of people. But if I'm not meant to have the app and that's not what God's will wants for me, take it. Because I know that something else that you really want me to do, that my soul is going to be happy with, is going to get sent to me instead. And so the reason why I say this is because we are seeing so many people, and we're going to see this more, so many people whose truths of what they hide well, maybe because they're great marketers, they've been able to hide it better for longer, I don't know. But we are going to see the true fabric of people's essence come out. And it's especially more acute in this industry because it's about helping people in a very obvious way. But it's going to happen in the beauty industry. It's going to happen in the finance industry. It's going to happen in everywhere. That I really want our cluster to not be confused about judgment. I want everyone to use their best judgment. I don't think being judgmental is bad. And there's people who say there's a difference, there's judgment versus discernment, and this means this and this means that, and or there's a difference between knowing and your own projection and whatever, and it's all become so complicated. How you know the difference of correct judgment versus incorrect judgment is that if there's still ego in it for you, you are getting a small mental high of passing that judgment. You need to tell everyone else that you feel that way. You need to source some kind of rightness or correctness or smartness or above others or pulling yourself up to their level because it gives you a small hit of being better than them, whatever it is. It's only you that will know the kind of flavor of the judgment that you are passing. So I'm not saying be egoically judgmental because that's also going to cost us. We're not going to be able to keep doing that either. But I want you to start trusting yourself. If you whiff that maybe there's 95% of good happening from this person, but somehow it doesn't gel, or somehow you're not drawn to them, or somehow you sniff there's something else going on behind the surface, this whole episode is to embolden you to say, I don't have to decide then that I'm totally getting on board with this person and ignoring the 5%, but or I'm also not yet, it's too soon to tell that I'm gonna, tar them with a brush. But I'm still gonna give myself licensing to notice along the way of like, something doesn't smell right. So that you have this protection mechanism of how deep in you go with this person and consume the energy that they are giving you, so that you stay a little bit more boundaried energetically, so that you don't swallow everything they say up whole, so that you don't believe everything that they say. Because, you know, it's so funny that when something does come out, a lot of people say, I always had a feeling, I always had a feeling. But why are we waiting for the thing to come out before letting ourselves admit that we had the feeling? And the reason why this is so important is because, like, the most important frequencies that are coming to any of us are the ones that are directly helping us with our becoming. So of course the spiritual industry has a close press to that. And I don't need to talk about the specific examples of things that are happening, but I'm hearing a lot of stuff at the moment, and different people will gel with different people. It's not to say that any of these people are overtly evil, but just because you used to vibe with someone, it doesn't mean that you have to now. And I feel incredibly responsible for who I vouch for, because I never want to be overriding your own internal, something doesn't smell right for me, by you just listening to me and me saying everything they do is amazing and I adore them and please go listen to them and whatever. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you can be a good enough energy reader, which you are, of the judgments that you're really passing because of ego, I don't want anyone to convince you that other judgments are bad to have. If you know when you're projecting on people versus when it's actually your inner moral compass and your moral warrior, which we need to be out and at play in the world right now. We need people with strong moral values to be saying, actually, this is below a level of integrity than what I'm wanting to have in my world. I don't want people with less integrity putting their ideas on me or in my orbit or convincing me of things, and so on and so forth. And so this is to also embolden you to start thinking, if you smell a rat, it's okay if it's trussed up in a cape and running around with a feather in its hat. It's still a rat. And there's a very English saying you can't polish a turd. And that's something that, and if you've listened to the latest New Paradigm episode, where I talk a lot about this, about how we've let go of the old paradigm so much, but that the new one is basically coming in thick and fast, especially over the next 3 months, so June, July, and August. But ultimately, this new paradigm is only going to get created to the degree that we are ready for it. So if you want to be the bringer of high integrity to your world, that's going to make the new paradigm as a whole more high integrity. And that's why this stuff does matter. And that's why all the things that are what we would call, excuse my language, but polished turds, they are not going to be able to carry on. So it's a case of when and not if that they're going to die to the new paradigm, because the new paradigm is not going to deal with it. And so do we want to be caught on the back end of that and be still even orienting our attention of who we deify and who we pedestalize, people who aren't acting in total integrity, versus quietly signing out before those people don't exist, or before those commonly shared values in society don't exist? Do we want to be the one who has emperor's new clothes because we were still bumping people up or drinking certain Kool-Aids? Even something as silly as a TikTok trend. Just stop being a drinker of Kool-Aid in every other way that it serves our ego. We have to start doing that now. And that's where, just a quiet observation of seeing a spiritual person talk about a billionaire today, those are all my thoughts that it has unfurled inside my brain today.
There's obviously so many directions that we could go in, but I think I want to just pull a thread through each of the things that you said, so that we can make it even clearer what this actually means for the people listening. So in the same way that each of us have these lofty ambitions, or maybe even goals that we don't really know where they came from, but they're these, I want to be a billionaire, I want to have 1 million followers. We all have whatever version of
A
that,
billionaire, yeah.
of billionaire, okay? Even if that's not yours. People who are in this spiritual industry also have those. And especially in this industry, we have to be, if you're consuming anyone in this industry, you have to be extra discerning, because everyone in this industry also has those things, and those things they are just as susceptible to going against their integrity to get those things because they want them as bad as you want them.
Mm-hmm. Maybe more.
Maybe more. And I think maybe it was less likely that that would happen before this became, because now it's called a spiritual industry. It is a full on industry. You're even saying in the beginning, if you want to make this your career, like, when have we ever said that in the past? If you were going to be in a spiritual career, I meant when you were starting this journey, you legitimately thought your only ambition would be to be reading the crystal ball on the news. That was
Mm-hmm.
the highest ambition you thought you could go in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
This is a full on industry now. And
Mm-hmm.
which means we have to keep our wits about us even more because wow, there are incredible teachers out there. There are incredible messages to be heard. There are incredible like eye-opening experiences that people are having and sharing that are changing people's lives. But it's it's getting loud and you have to figure out how to listen and discern and be okay with judging
Mm-hmm.
what you're hearing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have to curate so much more than ever, and we have to have a keener eye more than ever because of the amount of how clever it's gotten and also how much of it there is. Like it's like you said, it's just loud, so there's just so much of it. And also remembering that if you're looking for being right about something, your algorithm is going to keep you in that ego story. If you want to be in a story that everyone's a victim or that women are less powerful, then that's what your algorithm, you're seeking, you shall find. And so the whole point about this is that regardless of what industry you're in, the path now, if you really want to live your soul led experience, regardless of whether you're on a stage talking to 20,000 people about God or whether you are starting a flower business, have your goals and your dreams, get really, really clear on whether they're from ego or whether they're just like genuine soul dreams. And soul doesn't often dream in numbers necessarily, it dreams in feelings. And then numbers and goals orient themselves to get you those feelings, like peace or a beautiful family or service in a specific way. And you can get very specific about what your happiness code is. So have those things, get connected on what those true soul wants are, but also at every step of the way, be willing for them to die off, because the quicker you are in your becoming, the faster things change. And just because you wanted something yesterday, you cannot impose that on today as telling the story of who you are today. You have to be so radically open-minded to be like, instead of saying, I'm Jenna, I like waking up at this time, be willing to die to that narrative. Be willing to die to things that you've had been wanting for such a long time. Because if you are willing to listen to that, it's literally just the willingness to listen to the universe that actually makes you a creator on this planet, that makes God move through you. Is that you take nothing of your stories, of your desires into today, and that will always get you something absolutely fantastical. But that's what true surrender is. And that's why the dying of the ego has to happen every day. And also, the world is changing so rapidly that we have to get used to that level of change and pace in ourselves as the norm, because that's only how we can get ahead of the pace that life is at, right? Either we get swept by the pace of life or we are ahead of life. in terms of all the things that we think we've wanted to be or to come across or to have or to earn for such a long time. And that's really the gift of what rock bottoms do. The magic that can happen when someone is in a rock bottom is they finally go, you know what? I give it over to you. You tell me where to go from here. So why are we not doing that in our normal life? Because that's the power. The only thing that's happening is we're walking around in this kind of temporary comfort blanket, being like, you don't have to ask that today. You're fine. You're good. You're you. You're Jenna. You like this and you do this. So don't ask that question today. You're fine. Buy you another day off because everything's fine. Or it's just not bad enough that you care to ask that question. So we want to be getting on the front of it and say, as if every single day was the rock bottom in the most beautiful way, not meaning that I'm getting it wrong or that I'm doing anything wrong, but just like, wow, today is a totally blank slate. I bow my head to you in humility. Tell me what you want me to do today. And even if I don't like the answer, I will listen. And I was thinking, Taylor, about how important the decision maker is for this, because in the app, we have a feature called the decision maker, because it helps you really piece out what parts of you that want to make the decision. That essentially what human design says, and this is really the lesson, is your inside self always knows the answer, but it's just that sometimes you really don't want to hear the answer or you don't like what the answer is giving you. And so the decision maker is really designed to help you become more okay with those voices and still honor or at least become aware of what your real self is telling you, even if you're not ready to action it yet. But that's all it is. Like, we always know what we want to do. We always know the right answer. We just don't want to listen to it sometimes. And sometimes we don't even want to ask because we know it's going to come and tell us something our ego's really going to hate. So that's really what this whole thing is about, is like, I want to be able to hear absolutely anything, even if it stings, even if it kills a part of my ego, even if it punches me in the gut, because why would I not? This is the divine guidance speaking through me. It's not always going to be rainbows and unicorns. That's not how change happens. It's becoming masters of the alchemy of turning the grit into the gold. So what am I going to do? Just never look at the grit? That means I'm never going to turn it into gold. I'm never going to know that I'm a creator on this planet who's able to do that kind of alchemy. So, number one, be connected to what you truly want. But second of all, be willing for that to change all the time, because the goalposts are moving at such a rapid rate. And when I tell you, this is like the trial run of how quick the goalposts are going to move. And you're going to have to get totally comfortable with a new version of you presenting itself to you every day.
Yeah, I mean, just even in technical terms, the jobs that are going to exist in 5 years that people have now are not going to be their jobs, and the jobs that they're going to have don't even exist yet. So we have to stay light on our feet. But like, I'm actually a walking, talking proof of this working. When I started working for Jenna, with Jenna 3 years ago, 3 or 4, however long it was, she was originally my client. And one of my stories, one of my goals was that I will never work for someone again. And I remember there was just obviously this very splenic, very intuitive knowing that like I was supposed to work with you. We both knew.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a death for me. I had to kill my ego and say, actually, you are going to work for somebody again. I wouldn't, well, obviously wouldn't be here. This has been my dream job. This has been my dream life. Like everything that I wanted from working for myself, I got via working with you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like waking up every morning and having those wants and desires so deeply, but like you said, willing to be equally as wrong.
Mm. And it's interesting because we focus so much on the form of what we want rather than the actual juice in the fruit, right? So you knew that you wanted, the reason why you even said that, because that's your logical brain saying it's because I want a feeling of freedom. Like these are all innocent reasons why we construct these like forms that we then try to cling to and manifest, right? It's like because you wanted ultimately what you soul was wanting. What I was saying earlier is like it's the thing you want it to give you. So you wanted the freedom, you wanted to travel, you wanted to feel like you could be creative, you wanted to feel like you were like in charge of your own life, whatever, all the other things that that was going to give you. And then our logical brains, when we put them in charge, go, well, that means that it has to look like never working for other people ever again, and it has to look like, you've spoken about this on the podcast before, because you wanted to travel. That means you had to be a travel influencer or a fashion influencer and be paid to, post bikinis, and that's so now not something that you would orient towards at all.
No.
um, but you had to and this is another big concept in human design, is that the mind has to surrender to the form. So the concept of that is, again, it's like the mind with all its logicizing and all its beautiful desire to try and help us figure shit out just isn't qualified to do that. It's really qualified to become a great observer of life in some kind of way and create beautiful products and services and insights that it does by looking at the outside life. But in terms of like our lives and our becoming, the form, the aura, that's what human design is the science of how your aura functions. The mind has to bow to the form in the same way that our egos have to bow to the divine, the creator, in order to become like the creator. That's all it is. And the extent to which it doesn't is the extent to which we will be slowing ourselves down in this new paradigm.
I have another really good example. One of my friends, she is a pelvic floor physical therapist. She was working full time at a clinic and such long hours, making like a normal salary amount. And she took a risk using her authority. She's sacral authority, really following what lights her up because she loves pelvic floor physical therapy. Decided to start her own business, but also started YouTube vlogging on the side, kind of simultaneously. And because she was putting herself out more on the internet in a way that was lighting her up, like lifestyle vlogging, people were aware that she was starting a business. And immediately when she started that business, her calendar was full. And it has been full for a full year. She's now full time having her own business. And she's kind of in this place where she's feeling like, wow, I have all this time. I'm making way more money than I was making working at the clinic. I'm like vlogging. And she kept saying to me, well, I want to have 1 million YouTube subscribers. And I've said to her, maybe that is it. Maybe you are a full-time YouTuber someday, but also what if you just make vlogs for fun and that's like your marketing for your business and you're not, because she hasn't done any traditional marketing. She hasn't done the dropping off her flyer at all the different clinics and the other doctor's offices, any of that. What if
Mm,
it's just that? Are you okay
mm,
with that? And she's like,
mm,
yeah. So every morning it's, I want 1 million YouTube subscribers, but also, what if I don't? What if
mm,
I'm wrong? What if I have this
mm.
amazing, thriving business where I can be a mom full time and have a business that makes me more money than I was making working full time and I get to vlog and it's so fun?
Yeah, that's really what it is why do I want it? What do I think it's going to give me? What things of those really matter to me? And what am I willing to be without? And then sure, like if it's aligned for me, universe, like I'll set myself a goal, because goals also help us like direct our life force on this planet. They help funnel our specific essence into a goal, right? Into some kind of container that allows us to then kind of churn our wheels towards that thing. But as we go, if the goalpost moves, we want to stay light on our feet. Like you said, I love that phrase in this context. And so if she wants 1 million YouTube followers to feel validated, that's going to get interrupted at some point. And we need to learn to listen to the cues when they're small so that they don't get louder and louder. So that's why being open to being redirected is great. But there's nothing wrong in itself with wanting to like aim towards that. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to shoot towards some kind of target. So it's not to say that these things are bad, but it's just to say that be very clear about how much of that is ego, what you want it for, and what it's going to give you. And if you are doing it for any kind of validation, whether it's validating yourself to you or validation from other people, um, the universe has got us on a fast track right now. These things are going to get more acutely kicked down in us than they did before. And so just be ready that if we want to hold on to our egos, we are going to face a couple more smackdowns than if we were already going into this knowing proactively, I'm at every point, universe, at every point, You can take this from me. You can redirect me. I'm open. You can tell me whatever, even if it stings, I'll listen. That's a much better way to be moving through life at the moment. And that's what I feel like we're going to see so many examples of people who didn't listen because they were getting shiny carrots and they were getting rewards and they thought they could hide their not so great behavior from themselves or from the world if you have a public platform. But even if you don't have a public platform, we can delude ourselves, and that's just as negative. So we just have to just really hold ourselves up to the highest standard of integrity at every step of the way, because the universe wants to use people with integrity, because when you have integrity, you become like the light, right? And that's what is ultimately the most rewarding thing, is when you don't need to be worth this or have that or this many followers to validate you, because you validate you, and not because you validate you conceptually, but because you're really proud of, God, I can really sense being in love with who I am, that I know that I'm worthy, not from my mind, but because I feel like I'm a worthy person. I've done the work to show up as a worthy person. I've been in my integrity when it was hard. I've been kind when it was difficult. I've been extending myself to go push past, like doing the harder thing, not just reward myself, but just doing the semi-hard thing. Like when I've really lovingly and kindly pulled myself up to have good behavior along the way, I don't need validation because I know I'm a wonderful human being. That's the goal now. And anything that isn't that, whether it comes down in a year, in a week, in a month, it is going to come down. And I want our cluster to not have that experience. And that's why I'm telling us now. This is a slightly more sort of urgent call to action than what we normally do. But this is something that I would be so annoyed with myself if I didn't say it now, later on. And it's something that I would feel like I don't want to wait for this to become reality, to become the collectively accepted reality, for us to know how the energies are going to play out, so that we can become more like these things. And in doing so, it's not just you who's benefiting, it's everyone in your life is seeing you put out a different frequency, and that's also protecting them, and that's also moving them towards the right goalpost, which is the becoming and not the shiny carrots. And so we have to embody this now. And by just the level of how quantum physics works, if you're listening to this right now, it's because you're ready to hear this. I can feel people listening who just are people who are stand-up people and who are pure people. And I want you to hold on to that purity like it is the gold of the earth, because it is. And life is going to try and convince you at every step that there are other golds that you should put above that real gold. Purity, integrity, becoming, holding yourself to a high standard. If you just do that, the universe will give you a life that is a dream life that your brain didn't even know could be a level of a dream life for you, because your brain capped it at having 1 million followers. I can guarantee you that. That is my promise to you. Whenever this episode comes out, I think it's going to be out in a couple weeks. Please put a calendar reminder on yourself for a year's time or 6 months' time from when you hear this, and come back to seeing how you making that promise to yourself really paid off.